Welcome to Body by Design. I'm your host, Blue Driver, a women's strength training and metabolism coach. I went from years suffering hormone imbalances, looking soft and bloated, to symptom-free and building muscle for a toned athletic physique. Since then, I've made it my mission to empower women to take control of their own health, hormones and body composition. So grab a cup of coffee and let's build your body by design. Welcome everyone. And in today's podcast episode, I have a very special guest, Craig McDonald from New Strength. He is a co-founder at New Strength and also the Win at Life program. So welcome, Craig.
Thank you for having me, Lou. Always a pleasure.
For those of you who don't already know, Craig has been my long-time coach. I certainly started in their amazing Win at Life program, which set my hormones and health in the right place. In the last couple of years, I've trained directly with Craig. So I thought it'd be really great to get Craig on and just talk about his development as a coach over time and his growth, because I've certainly seen a lot from him and admire all of what he's done, and then thought it might be a bit fun to get the coach's perspective on the journey that I've been through, because you've heard it all from me, but let's hear it from the man himself. So Craig, tell us a bit more about Win at Life and New Strength and where you're at with your business at the moment, because you're doing some amazing things and helping great women.
Oh, thanks so much. So New Strength started in January 2015. My partner, Kitty Bloomfield, and we actually bought into what at the time was the Pure Energy gym, and that was her coach, Cheryl. And she was running a small gym in Mount Gravatt. I was just like, well, I was doing PT, and we kind of got together and we're like, oh, let's do this thing in with her. And her business wasn't really going too well. And after about a week, I kind of realized why it wasn't going too well. And about 3 months later, we sort of parted ways and brought her out of the business and pretty much just started it from scratch. It would have been much cheaper in hindsight for us to just open our own gym and not do it that way.
Lessons learned.
First lesson in business learned, hard lesson. And it just really come about from, my passion at the time for, teaching strength training in the way it's meant to be taught. And, Kitty's passion for the nutrition and the pro-metabolic approach, and learning from Emma Skarakis, who's now our business partner in Saturday, and understanding the work of Ray Pete. And we just, over time, we just developed this framework and this method to kind of combine the two. And we ended up selling the gym. We transitioned into online in 2017. We ended up selling the gym 2 weeks before COVID. So the new owners sort of took over, and then they were closed for about 4 months, which was just like, we felt so bad because we were just like, oh my God, these people have moved up from Melbourne, they've taken over the gym, and now they're closed. We just sold it. So it was, our accountant was like, how did you guys pull that off? It's just dumb luck is what that was. But fast forward to where we are now, we're running our online coaching company. We've got 7 coaches under me. We've got 1 in the UK, 1 in the US, and 5 coaches here in Oz. And I mean, our whole approach is very much around, the pro-metabolic approach of it being a lifestyle, and what being an optimized human actually means, which is, everything. It's not just having a good body. Well, that's one element, and having more muscle and doing the strength training, but also, as you mentioned, you come into the program wanting to, fix your hormones and sleep through the night and have better energy and good digestion and all of these things. That's to us what determines, what a healthy person is. So, we continue to push that message as hard as we can. And I mean, you'll hear during your own coaching business now, and you're having great success, and it's wonderful to see, and that same message being pushed. So, who would have thought all these years later doing a podcast and you're interviewing me?
Yeah, I know. How nervous am I?
It's so good to see. It's awesome.
Look, amazing business, and you guys, I really admire you guys for the message you are getting out there. And obviously I am forever grateful for the changes that you made in my life. I mean, I literally came looking for a training program. So in the words of you, so I wasn't just doing a bunch of random shit and found you guys. And when I started reading all the things that Kitty says about, health, and it just all made sense. And that's when it started clicking to me that these issues that I've got that doctors can't fix. The chronic thrush for years. And I flew to
Yes.
doctors in other states trying to resolve that. And yes, it took time, but it made sense what you guys said. And eventually it was better. And my endometriosis symptoms are all gone. So I
Yes.
am forever grateful for the message that you guys push. And there needs to be more of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember when you first came into the program, it was just like, wow, you really were dealing with a lot. And, it can be really difficult, especially like those things like endometriosis and thrush. I mean, like I obviously, we're not doctors. That's not what we do. We're not part of the medical system. But I think ultimately, as you said, you were approaching lots of different doctors. You were flying into state to try and get answers, and you just weren't. Um, well, I mean, you weren't really
I
moving the
wasn't
needle
healing.
at all,
No,
and
just managing what was
it's
there. That's all
yeah,
it was doing.
and I think that's just such an important point to understand is that the difference between taking a proactive approach and taking ownership for where you are in your health journey and what needs to be done, as opposed to just going to doctors and just relying on this. Well, they're a doctor, they say I've got to take this pill, I've got to do this thing, so I'm just going to do it. And I always try to challenge clients as much as possible. I'm like, well, is what you're doing working? Are you actually seeing any measurable improvement in this? And if the answer is no, then it's just like, well, you're going to get more of the same, because ultimately what we see from the medical establishment is like, well, this is the way we've always done it. You take this pill and we're not going to really ask you any other questions around that. And it always just baffles me when a medication is prescribed without just going, tell me about your life. How much sleep do you get? What's your diet like? Like
Craig, I was
all of these
literally
basic
told.
things.
I was
Mm,
literally told, forget about your diet. That's not
mm,
going to make any difference.
yeah.
Just take this pill. And
Yeah.
this pill had me having liver function tests regularly, at
Yes.
least twice a year,
Yeah.
because long-term effects of it
Yeah.
can impact your liver function. So
Yeah.
there was
It's
they
crazy.
directly told me forget about nutrition. But when I
Yeah.
found you guys and the message and looked more into Ray Pete and Emma
Mm,
and all these things, it
mm,
made sense. Now, does that mean that I abandoned what a doctor had told me and medication or the rest of it? No,
no,
it took some time to see improvements before I could start to come off that. I'm not suggesting that anyone should just change their diet and forget medication, but
yeah.
um, certainly the thing is changing your diet is not going to harm you or go against anything that the doctors prescribe for you. So
Yeah.
why not try it? Why not give it a go?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's if you read any of Ray Pete's work, like if you read any of his newsletters, it's pretty heavy. He
Yeah, he
writes
is.
in a way that's just like, oh my god, like what this guy's going so deep. But when you actually step back and you look at it from a 10,000-foot view on the underlying point or the message that he's trying to say, he's like, use everything that makes sense. He's like,
Yep.
diet is going to be the thing that your body responds to the best, because you need certain nutrients and certain amounts on a consistent daily basis for your body to do what it needs to do, so it's not compensating. And a lot of these metabolic gyrations and compensations is ultimately what leads to a lot of these autoimmune issues and things. So it's just like, we just kind of, in the nicest possible way, just need to unfuck yourself and just go back to the behavior, lifestyle, and habits that kind of got you there, and adjust those first, and then implement the nutrition and the other lifestyle changes. But then also using medications at point, like Ray Pete often talked about different medications that can be really effective in
Yep.
certain scenarios. So I'm like, you use it all to your disposal, and I think it's the important point of looking at the biggest picture possible,
Yeah.
and then trying to fill the gaps. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I am forever grateful that I found this way. But
Yep.
I'd like to get in a little more about you and your development as a coach. I've watched you develop. I've probably been a bit of a guinea pig along the way as well.
You sure have.
Um, well, it's worked. So I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into your side of things, and then we'll go into what happened with me. But I've always admired your desire to forever learn and look at new ways of doing things. And I mean, you just mentioned before about Ray Pete saying, "Do what makes sense," and I think that's part of your learning. So, what's been some of your biggest learnings out of your to bring you to the successes that you have in your own training and coaching?
Yeah, so even now with what I'm sort of doing in the business, I'm not really doing so much of the coaching anymore. I'm moving into other areas of business development. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to be a perpetual student because I won't try and digress too much, but just kind of understand my thought process. When I was leaving school or the end of grade 12 and you had my parents and everybody else just going, oh, what do you want to do when you leave school? And I had no idea. Even if I was to ask that question now, I'd kind of like, well, now that I know what, but the reality is I had no idea, and nothing that was being offered to me made sense intuitively. And so it became the very easy question of like, well, what do you like to do? And I'm like, at that time, all I cared about was playing guitar and playing in heavy metal bands. So I was like, I'll go and do work experience in a guitar shop. And then I got in there and it was like a duck to water. I just loved being in there and I loved the guitar. I loved learning about all the stuff that the manager, like after a week, he was like, do you want to start like when you finish your traineeship and actually start full time? So I was like, hell yeah, like this is awesome. So I just fell into it because of a passion. And I was in the music industry for 7 years, learned so much and moved into wholesale and did lots of things. And once I got to the end of that and I was just like, well, what do I like doing now? And I was just like, well, I love learning about strength training and nutrition and whatever. So I'm just going to go and do that, do a PT and whatever. And it just, that same approach, that same excitement and desire of learning new things and want to learn new things is ultimately what led to the success of our business. I'm still the perpetual student. I still love learning new things. And when I talk to someone, and in terms of like training and macros and calories and foods, there's not really a lot left I can learn so much. But I still seek other people's opinions because they might say something in a way or do something in a way and go, fuck, I've never thought of it like that. That's actually really cool. And then I get all excited and then I think about how I'm doing things or what we're doing in our program. Like, how can I implement that? Because that's I think that can really help people. And it's just forever just accepting that I'll never know everything, but the journey of continually wanting to consume more and more info and talk to more people and understand the bigger approach. It still gives me goosebumps now. Like it's still at a deeper passion. So even though I'm not directly working with people on a coaching level anymore, I still get fucking excited by this stuff. Like it really, even now, like I've just started reading some new posts that Chris Beardsley done, and I'd only finished just doing his mentorship program late last year. And it was really heavy because he goes really, really deep into like exercise physiology and he reviews a lot of the studies and a lot of that stuff's really hard, but he's got a good way of kind of breaking it down. But I've just watched those videos over and over, like all the Zoom recordings that we did. So it's just slowly sinking in. But every time I have this new little connecting of the dot, this new realization, I'm like, oh, fuck, that's cool. Okay, I get this now, and then that's just how you've like you said, you've been a guinea pig of a lot of this stuff, and I kind of would never say, hey, I've just learned this. I'm just like, we're doing this, and just, I think a lot of time I'd like to think you just bought into my certainty, but it was never based off like, oh, let's just do this and see how it goes. There was a very specific rationale of how I'd come to that point at that time.
Even though you always said to me, we're doing this, you had an explanation to why.
Yes.
And it made sense to me as well. I mean, even though you were my coach and I'm very much about trusting my coach and doing what they say, it's still got to make sense to me too. And I think that, everything that you brought to me always made sense. So how do you, out of all that information out there, there's so much conflicting information. I mean, you look at from your perspective as a coach, how much there is to sift through. So, the everyday person is going to really struggle. But how do you sift through all of that to know what's good for you and what do you bring into your training and your coaching style?
So first of all, it's intuitively got to make sense.
Mm.
I've got to like understand and try and get the, say if it's someone talking about a specific system. And certainly now as I've gone on, like I understand the mechanisms of muscle growth on a deeper level. And I understand that, just because there's a study on something, when you actually read the study and actually understand the study design, you can go, this was done by fucking monkeys. Like seriously, like this just doesn't
Detail
make
is
any
the devil
sense.
in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just, and again, we've got to think a bit more critically and kind of look past the stuff. There's like, oh, studies it show that, and I'm like, show me these studies and let's see how they're actually put together. Because just because it's a study doesn't mean it's correct or even relevant to you as an individual.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a skill, and that that's something that's happened over years and years of just kind of understanding it a bit more. But I think ultimately, intuitively, it's got to make sense, and the person who's saying it has to be able to explain it to you in a way and just go, yep, okay, cool, and I think after that point, if you have that understanding, and then you're more likely to buy into it. Like everything else that we do, it's just a case of test and measure. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how is it, how this particular training program, it's a 12-week block. You've got 3 different phases that go for 4 weeks. The first block is an accumulation phase, and the next phase is an intensification, whatever it is, however they've sold it to you, so to speak. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, it intuitively makes sense. It understands. Does this person have results? Does he have some, actual credibility here? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to go all in on this. 100% go all in on this and just do it, because only then at the end of that can I then come to the conclusions of, yeah, this worked because of XYZ reason. And these are the reasons what I didn't like about it. But that accumulation of knowledge and awareness then allows your shroud expands more, and you kind of go, okay, cool. That does this. Okay, what's the next thing I can do? That. Okay, cool. Does it. Then you have these 2 things that you've tried, and then all of a sudden you start to take the best bits from each one. And over time, you start to develop your own sort of style. So, I mean, Bruce Lee was famous for this. I think he had a famous quote of sort of saying, only use what's relevant or something. And similarly, like Ray Peat would sort of say this sort of similar things. These people that would look everything, and back in his day, it was like, well, he did Chinese Kung Fu, and if he went and did anything else, it was very much frowned upon. But he went and worked with wrestlers, and he went and worked with boxing guys, and he did kickboxing. He did all these things, and he developed his own style. And arguably today, he could be the most influential figure in martial arts, because he had such an open mind and just gone, this kind of seems a bit strange, but I'm going to ask enough questions. Yeah, it kind of intrigues me. Let's just give it a crack and see how it goes. Do you know? Awesome. And I think from a fundamental, if we're talking about muscle building, any program that you do and you train it hard enough and consistently, you're going to see some result from it. Now, the only way you can then determine, well, that didn't work and this one's better, is by trying them both. Right? Yep. So you try them both, and it has to, you have to do it that way to truly get the understanding. And I think this is where a lot of people come wrong, and you would know this coaching people as well.
They're looking for the one answer.
They're looking for the one answer, right? They've tried a lot of things. They've tried everything, but they haven't done one thing well enough, consistently for long enough. And it's just like, well, why haven't all those other things worked? Oh, this thing kind of worked. Or why aren't you still doing that? Oh, because of this. They can't really articulate why it didn't work. But all of a sudden, they're now working with you, and they're like, well, I don't know if I believe in this. And I'm like, but can you tell me why it wouldn't work? Well, they can't, because no one's going deep enough. No one's asking the critical questions to determine if this is something that could actually work or not. And if they don't know, all you've got left is to go, this person's a coach. Kind of feels good. It makes sense. I've obviously reached out to them because of what they're doing on social media, and their content kind of intuitively makes sense. I'm going to go all in.
Yeah.
Go all in. That's it. That's all you can do. And then, over time, that journey, you continue to go through it, and you just come to the conclusions, and that's how it all rolls.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Going all in, and sometimes, there's not a right or wrong answer, but there's a right answer for your body as well. I think, we will all respond differently as well. So trialing different things is certainly a way to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned a recent mentor program that you've just finished. Now, I've always known you to have different coaches as you go along, and I'm sure a lot of that has been your own exploration and development of your own style. Out of all of that, you would have had a lot of different coaching relationships.
Yes.
What do you think are the important elements for a client coaching relationship to really maximize the benefits?
Communication is at the top of the list, 100%. My biggest gripe with some of the coaches that I've worked with, and some of these coaches are what you would refer to as industry leading people. Great coaches, but their coaching service fucking sucks. And I
Seeing
mean that,
some of that already.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's just like they know it. They've got all the smarts there. They've done all the work to understand it. But their ability to be able to communicate it and create a framework for you as a client to actually engage in and understand, and have the ability to you know, voice your concerns, and then being able to adjust the program in certain ways to make it work for you as the individual.
Mm,
In my experience, that those coaches are very few and far between. In my experience, right? I'm not
mm,
saying I know there's a lot of great coaches out there, and obviously, you know, like yourself, obviously the coaches at my program, like, you know, there's a lot of people that are doing it well, but a lot of the people they're very good at being very present on social media. But when it comes to their own particular clients and how they do things, it's really poor. So communication and their ability to create a coaching service that allows a good back and forth between the coach and client. There needs to be a rapport built there, that the person feels safe and they feel heard, but they also have certainty from that particular coach that the concerns and them hearing them and what they need and for their goal, and that the way they've structured that process is very specific to them.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean that would be the biggest thing, and in terms of, obviously, just if you're a coach, like understanding, you know, all the basics around building a program and calories and macros. You know, most coaches, you know, should kind of know that at a fairly deep level. But I reckon the vast majority of coaches would get better results for their clients if they just had a better communication, and they made the coaching experience more of a, we work as a team. Okay, this is the
Yeah.
plan, right? Like I'll steer the ship. Ultimately, you need to drive it, but we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to find ultimately what works. Because you remember, for a coach, a lot of the time they don't know you from anything, you know, and often what people say and what they do are two different things. So
Mm.
there's always got to be an initial kind of feel out period and whatever, but all of that can be
And I
pretty
think
much
the
gated
client
through
really needs
communication.
to, I think people who want to engage in coaching, other than the coach needs to foster that environment, but that takes time to build that trust. So I think bouncing from coach to coach is not a great thing. You do need to build trust.
Yep.
But people who want to go into coaching, I feel like they really need to understand that there should be that back and forth, and
Yes.
there should be that communication on their part as well, because we're only someone on the other end of the internet unless you actually communicate. Like there's not, yeah. So we can create the environment, but we only can create that trusting environment by them engaging with us to begin with. So then they see the evidence of that safe environment. So I think, you know, anyone
Yeah.
out there listening, also remember that your responsibility going into coaching is to feed the information in as well. So your coach can work with you, certainly two-sided.
Yep. No, exactly right. Yeah, we're not mind readers, and you also don't pay us to guess. So
Yep.
the
That's
more
right, you're
accurate
paying
the
us, use the
information.
users.
Yeah, no, but it is, and I think that, you know, in some cases, like a lot of people don't always know how to be coached. You know, they don't always know what the expectations are and that sort of thing. So again, the coach has got to be able to deliver that and
Yep,
give them clear direction on what
and
they need to
invite
do.
them in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
They've got to feel safe. They've got to feel that you have their best interest at heart. Absolutely.
yeah. What are the, latest industry trends that just you're tired of?
Oh fuck! I don't think we've got enough time
Did I open up a can of
for
worms?
me to go at.
No, come on, no ranting,
Um,
just give us some.
I think. Look, I think there's not one thing in particular, like a particular style of training or diet or anything like that. I think what annoys me the most is um, the absolutism that comes. So for example, with nutrition, it's a perfect example. You've got carnivore. You only eat meat. You've got keto. You never eat carbs. You've got vegan. All right. You don't eat animal products, but that's promoted as a healthier alternative to it. You've got these absolutes that no, you can't do any of that. You've got to do it this way. And often a lot of those have come from the particular person who's pushing it. Well, when I did this, it worked for me, so therefore it'll work for you as well. And I think that's a very dangerous approach for any coach or anyone to really buy into. And, a lot of my spiel when I talk about like how we do things, yes, we've got foods that we recommend you eat more of and foods that you ultimately should avoid, and then foods that you might be able to eat on occasion, but you want to limit to it. And here's all the reasons why. But ultimately, when it comes to a nutrition framework, what works for me may not work for you. What works for some may not work for others. And that's just not in terms of the food choices. It all has to first come back to enjoyment. If I set you a diet or a program and you fucking hate it, well, what's the point? Right?
Yep.
If I just say,
it is harder in the beginning when you want them to have input to those menu plans, but just handing someone a generic plan is not the answer either.
Well, and again, it does depend on the person who's coming in. If someone just comes in, look, I don't care about, I just want you to write me a diet. I'm like, cool.
That's great.
Whatever.
That's
cool.
Great.
All right. And sometimes like you've got to kind of meet the person where they're at. And this is something, I've had people that have been quite resistant to it. It's like, well, this is the way I've always done it, whatever. I'm like, cool, well, you've just paid me a bunch of money to be here. So let's just kind of go over your goals and, well, what it is that you want. And so, okay, well, how about we set it up with the foods that you ultimately want. Start with enjoyment. Let's start with the structure, how many meals per day you want to have. Let's set the ratio of the macros up to a bit more conducive to something that you can actually stick to and really enjoy. Here are some non-negotiable foods in terms of like nutrient availability that I want to have in your diet. And then we'll add in the things that you want. And then let's just stick with that. And then over time, as we start to do the check-ins and we look at a little bit more of your biofeedback data and you're like, oh, my digestion's real crap. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, let's look at what you're eating. From my own experience, here are a couple of things that I believe are going to be causing those. How about we remove those out and replace them with something like this? How does this sound? And then because by doing that, we're putting the onus kind of back on them. And sort of saying, well, look, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Let's just make a few variable changes and let's go another week and see what happens. And slowly over time, I'm manipulating them to do what I want them to do. No, I wouldn't say manipulate. But it's just, it allows them to kind of go, okay, I'm just dipping my toes in now. I'm dipping my foot in now. I'm getting my shin. I'm getting my knee in. And that can be an approach. Some people just need a hard drop the hammer approach. I'm like, I just need you to do this because you overcomplicate the fuck out of everything. And if you just follow this, I guarantee you by the end of the week, and that certainty, they just go, yeah, okay, I'll do it. So obviously,
and often people like that, it's a relief for them too. But then
100%, that's what they're wanting. Some people are wanting that, absolutely. Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, the whole premise, coming back to your original question, it's like what I'm trying to do is help you find the nutrition structure and the foods and the amount of meals that you want to eat per day that you're ultimately going to enjoy and feel good on. Because if you tick those two boxes, you're going to adhere to it. And it's that adherence over time is what's going to get the result. So we can work together on that, and that's cool. And then that removes any of that. Oh, but I've heard carnivore and I heard carbs are bad, so keto's better and all that. I'm like, just let go of the white noise. Let's just start it from a point of enjoyment first. Right. And let's see how it goes. So,
in your own progression, and I think, coaches are not immune to any of the hurdles, the blocks, the mental plateaus. What do you do to get through a mental plateau?
That's a good question. I think I've always got to just come back to the reason why I'm doing something. And I think it's very easy, certainly with stresses within daily life for you to drift off certain things. And I I really just try to hold a standard for myself, because I believe that holding a standard and following through on the things that I said that I was going to do is, for me, the best form of self-love. Okay. If I'm
Yeah.
filling my own cup first,
Yep.
then I know that I can then give the energy that I need to give to the rest of my team, and to Kitty, and to all the people that I care about.
It's
And
that old oxygen mask on the aeroplane scenario, isn't it? You know?
exactly right. That's exactly right. And I truly believe that's just the thing that, if I hold myself to that standard, I don't have to worry about motivation. It just becomes these are the things that I do, so I just do them. And then if we go a little bit more nuanced in terms of like training, for example, it's just like, oh man, my headspace is not into it today, or whatever. Okay, why is my headspace not into it today? Okay, I'm thinking about this stuff from work. Okay, is it critical that I think about this stuff now, or can it wait the hour until I get this done? Okay, yeah, no, I can wait the hour. Right. So stop procrastinating now. What's the mission today? It's calf raise, leg curls, hack squats, leg extensions. Okay. How do I eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Right. First set of fucking calf raises. Here we go. Stick the music
And
on.
once
Let's
you
get
get
it done.
started, I think once you get started in those scenarios as well, it kind of flows from there anyway.
Or after 15 years of doing this now, I never regret doing a workout. Like after it's finished, I'm like, I'm tired, but I'm like, I'm really glad I got that. Psychologically, I feel so much better. And I know that the rest of my day is going to be set up accordingly.
Yeah,
So
totally
it's
agree.
just, it's the standards, put yourself first, have that self-respect, have that self-love, and everything just tends to generally sort of fall into place after that.
I lean really heavily into when things are going astray, or even over Christmas, like, you kind of, let
Yeah,
things
take
go
the
a
foot
little
off the
bit.
gas.
And
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
But when you do it for long enough, it becomes your safe place and your habit anyway, because it makes you feel good. Even if you don't like doing it on the day, it makes you feel good. So when you stray off the path long enough, I think you find actual relief in coming back onto it. But it's just getting yourself to the point where you've done it long enough to be that habit that you
Yes.
crave again.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Craig's go-to training list for music.
I've got a Spotify playlist that's just called Craig's Gym, and I think I've had it for probably about 5 years, and it's just accumulated more and more songs. I don't know, there must be like 300 songs on there or something like that now. But it's all hard rock, heavy metal. I love Metallica and Machine Head and Slayer. There's some Foo Fighters on there, and Pearl Jam, and all of that stuff. Yeah, anything that's going to give me a bit of a kick in the ass to get through the session is good.
Righto. Awesome. Let's have a flip the script a bit. I'm always on social media talking about my journey from my perspective, and I really wanted, and I'm actually really interested to hear this, because Craig and I actually haven't had a big discussion over any of this, but Craig's perspective on this. Let's say I've probably been in this whole journey for 18 months, but I've been with you for 2 years, I think. But my whole cut build phase has been about an 18-month process by the time I get out.
Mhm.
If I ever get out of this deficit, it feels like it's been forever. So we'll go into that a bit. But I think before I got to this place with you, we touched on it a little bit earlier, there were things I had to do, because this whole cut has been more of a bodybuilding style cut, and not what you would recommend. Certainly not something I'd recommend for my everyday clients who come in that have got a lot of hormone issues, health issues, gut issues, have only just started training, those sorts of things. And I think I feel like in a health journey, there's certain milestones that you've got to check off as you go. And I certainly feel like I've checked off milestones. From your perspective, what are those milestone check off boxes that I've done and other people can draw on to understand probably a process to get to where they want to be?
Yeah, so like you touched on it earlier. You come into our program because you wanted a training program. And it wasn't until we did the assessment that was sort of like, okay, like you've got all of these issues, you first of all, you're not going to improve any of these issues by being in a calorie deficit.
No.
You're not going to improve any of these issues by eating some of the foods that you were eating and, switching over to more nutrient dense foods and understanding digestion and how things sort of work and balancing
Yep.
your macros and all these sort of things. And the reality is, and as you know now, like you're in a stage where you're trying to get Photoshoot lean, and
Yep.
that's beyond kind of what the lifestyle lean element would be. So you're pushing things a little bit harder. And the reality is you probably thought that's something that you would have wanted earlier on. But the reality is it would have just pushed you into an even bigger hole if we had just started you straight into a fat loss phase. Like your metabolism was already down, right? You had all the thyroid or all of the issues that come from somebody who's in a compromised state. And getting you out of that compromised state has to be the very first thing that happens. And, and I've had this enough over time where I've explained all this, and the person's like, look, I don't care about that. I just need to get this fat off. And I'm like, okay, you're going to do something. You're already in a compromised health state. You now want to do something that's going to further compromise yourself. What you actually need is a psychologist, because there is deeper issues here that are playing for you to want to completely dismiss your own health in order to satisfy a aesthetic look. Right? That's an issue, and I'm certainly not qualified to help someone on that journey, but that's ultimately what they need. And I think, having that strong stance to just go, in my professional opinion, this is how you need to do things. And we need to get it to this point where you're sleeping through the night and your hair's not falling out and you're not getting thrush anymore and you're not doing all of these things. How long is that going to take? Well, it's going to take as long as it's going to take, and ultimately it's going to come back to your commitment and doing all the things day in, day out to actually see those improvements. So a lot of
Boring
this is
consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I've done my time of that. Definitely.
So you do it, and then you tick that off, and you're like, okay, I'm in a good state now. Cool. All right. And obviously during that time we get you training and trying to build muscle and that sort of thing. But it's always just a little bit harder when recovery is a little bit more inhibited and you're not feeling good and you've got a thrush outbreak and trying to go to gym. Like it's just like, okay, well, once you clear all those things, then we can start really focusing on the performance aspect and really trying to focus on the body composition change. But, that's one of the hardest points to get across to people. I'm like, if you've been in this state for 10 years or something like that, and you've had all these chronic issues, I'm like, it's not going to be fixing. It's not going to fix itself in 12 weeks. If you do everything right, you'll see some real vast improvements pretty quickly, but it could just take a while. So you have to understand that I'm fundamentally going to be changing the way I live, which means I might also have to have hard conversations with my significant other, my kids, with my social circle.
It's not just food, it's the lifestyle.
The lifestyle. It's all of these things. This is what being in that optimized state is. It's having the power to go, I'm putting myself first. I'm going to start using the word no a lot more. The need, the desires. It's like, I want to go out and drink and have eat Indian food or whatever it is. It's just like, well, no, if your goal is to improve a lot of these things and really start to see that body composition change, you're going to have to do those things very, very infrequently, and probably if you're in that state.
And it's just a season of life. It doesn't have to be like that forever. It's just a season you need to go through. There has to be some compromises. People look at this sustainable weight loss and I should be able to maintain it. That means I can keep going out and doing what I like. Well, no, not really. We can certainly guide them with that when they do have certain events to go out to, not every weekend, but, they've got the brother's wedding or, Mary Jane's birthday and they want to celebrate some of these. We can help guide them through those events, but the less they're doing that, the quicker they're going to get to the place that they want to be.
Correct. And then once you do get there, like, I mean, I'm in a state now and you'll be the same, obviously, once you finish your dieting and photo shoot period where you can let your hair down. If you want to go out and have a few meals off the plan and have some drinks. And it's always interesting, like my partner, Kitty, she loves to have champagne and cocktails and stuff when we go out, and she tends to post on. She just loves it. But she's in a point now where she can do that stuff a little bit more regularly, and it's not going to make any difference to her body composition or her state of mind or her ability to get back on and eat her food the way it is, because it's so ingrained in her. It's just like, this is just how she does things. And for people who don't see it, like they see and they're like, how do you eat all this food and you drink like that and you maintain this same thing? She's like, well, because I've done 10 years of getting to this point.
Yep.
Like
You don't just one day wake up and can eat, I don't know what Kitty's on now, but I'm on about 2,400. I didn't just wake up and start eating that. It was a building process.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had to tick all these things off to get up to that point. And a lot of that is just the accountability, the proactive approach to nutrition, planning ahead, understanding what events that you've got on and when you need to take your food and when you need to adjustments. I mean, people look at that and they just go, it seems restrictive that I've got to do anything. And I'm like, it's not. It's actually the complete opposite. It's removing decision fatigue. It's
Yeah.
removing the psychological damage of knowing that you've fallen off the wagon again because you're at an event and all you had to eat was like a deep fried chips or something like that. It's just like, I never find myself in those positions ever. And it's just like, it's not because I'm particularly magical in my approach. It's just like, I just understand what I need to do to feel the best.
Invest some time into that education. Like a great example. I mean, you're talking about deep fried chips at a party. I'm facing a cyclone. Okay. Yes, it's going to cross above me. There's potential when this happens that you lose power.
Yeah.
The first thing Dean said to me was, should we be looking at some, maybe you should grab some tins of beans or something like that while you're at the supermarket. And I went, yeah, we should probably have some food in case we lose power, because if we lose power, we've probably got a couple of days of our freezer. We've got a barbecue with gas. That's great. But what happens if it goes longer than that? So we do have to be prepared. And I'm like, fuck, I'm eating beans. I'm not doing that. So I just, with the knowledge that I had, I just scoured through a few of the shelf-stable things they have in the supermarket. We've got a butter chicken. We've got a Thai green curry. They've got a couple of little things in them, but hey, we're all pretty good. I've got some UTH milk, some powdered milk. We've got all of our protein. We've got vanilla. Yeah. We've got enough to keep us going and for me to still, meet protein targets.
Yeah, exactly.
And I look at that and I go, well, if we're in dire situation where we're in a bit of a state and there's been power out for a week and stuff like that, at least I know I can look after myself to weather that storm. Weather that storm with a bloody cyclone coming.
Yeah, the words.
But if you don't spend the time in getting the education, you're not going to know how to do that. And I think that's where some of these, we talked about, just handing meal plans to people and not helping them build them. Yes, okay, sometimes they need that in the beginning, but you need to be with a coach that's going to educate you on how to manage yourself. Ideally, I like to set my clients free with the education, knowing they don't need me.
That's right.
But it takes time. 12 months. I always say to them, 12 months will change your life. And I think, you guys are the same. 12 months and it can change your life with education and consistency.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Definitely.
Exactly.
So there are a lot of tough times in clients' journeys. Still pressing forward and balancing it with empathy. How do you get them to do that? Because you certainly have taken me through some extreme times. I mean, I've been with you in the time that Dean's had cancer again. He's had some malpractice through a hospital I worked at. Very stressful times, yet you always manage to keep me on the path with that empathy. How do you balance that?
I think getting, first of all, getting an understanding of the gravity of the situation, and then looking back at, at what phase that we're currently in at the moment and what the goals of that particular phase were, whether it's nutrition and training, etc. And then having a discussion around, or basically you're having a discussion with you around, okay, like what do you believe you are capable of doing? And letting you come to that realization that you're under a massive amount of stress. And
we have to make big changes.
Yeah. And what that actually means in the bigger picture. And then from there, once I kind of understand, okay, this is where you're at, this is where your mindset is, here are the options. We can continue to press forward if you believe that you're good and you're using this because it's a good way to take your mind off things and you want to continue to press forward, or the stress is just a little bit, your recovery is going to be inhibited. Okay, let's make an adjustment to your training volume. Let's pull that back a little bit. Let's pull your calories back to maintenance calories. Let's sit here for a couple of weeks, and just try and maintain what we've got, and hammer home the fundamentals of just food prep, which is something I didn't need to do with you because you already had all that stuff down pat. And then just again coming back to that communication thing, like let's just communicate regularly, give me an update, see how you're going, and once you sort of come through to the other end of that, we just do a bit of an assessment on where you're at and just kind of go, okay, look, like for you, even though, you went through all those really heavy times, there really wasn't too much of a drop off in terms of like you just falling off the wagon and eating shit or just not like training for a week.
I think you even suggested I should stop training at one stage, and I was like, no. I think that was my meltdown day where I sat in tears going, no, don't take my training off me. It's the only thing I've got left.
Yeah. But for some people who wouldn't mentally, like, they would be like, yeah, it would be nice just to have a little bit of break. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. You've got a lot of stress, but I still want you to focus on trying to hit your step target every day, get outside, get sun, do all the things that are conducive to, influencing recovery. But in your case, like, you were still doing all those things anyway. So it was more of a case of like, well, what do you feel needs to happen? And I think, again, coming back to what we touched on earlier, if there's that back and forth there of like, well, you've told me all this is what I believe we could do. What do you think? And then it's trying to help you be okay with that decision and understanding
the process isn't always linear.
It's not, and it's just like in the big picture of everything, over the last couple of years and where you'll continue to go, is this point in time going to be a significant factor in you not making the progress? Very unlikely, given that you're already doing the fundamentals well. So, I just, it's just got to come back to that communication, let you air out everything that you need to, just making sure that you feel heard and supported. And then whatever adjustment I make, I always just run by you. But I always try and preface it from the point I'm like, based off what you've told me, this is what I believe we should do. How do you feel about this? And that way there's a level of certainty from me that I just go, well, if we do it like this, it's going to work based on the outcome that we've discussed. But ultimately, you've got to be able to buy into it. How do you feel about it? What's your gut telling you? What questions do you have around this? And I think if that kind of space is being held for both coach and client, then it's pretty easy to navigate. So
you made it feel easy for me.
Well, it's good.
So thank you.
I'm glad. You're very welcome.
Yes. It was almost like my sanity inside of a whole space where I had no control. And I felt like I had some control, and you fostered that. You made sure that, even though you were guiding me, you were giving me the decisions of what and options of what would be good for me. But ultimately it was up to me, and it gave me that feeling, just grounded me again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome.
Certainly kept me on path.
That's good.
Training volume. I know before training with you, I don't know how to do reps in reserve, which you found out really quickly. I just don't fucking know how to do that. All I know how to do is get on and go hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to count reps and all that sort of stuff. I know that some of the things that were happening with me before training with you is I found I was hitting a wall regularly with recovery and needing to deload. But in my time with you, I didn't deload much. How did you work out what was good for me and what was and what training volume should be right for me?
Yeah. So again, kind of come back to what we spoke about before. It's just like we set the plan, we test and measure, we go forth, and over time, obviously, working together for that long, you start to understand you and what works best for you. And I think obviously during that time, there was a point where I would always deload people regardless, because a lot of what I did go through a phase with what I was learning and understanding from the people that I was getting taught from at the time, was that volume needs to be accumulated. You start with lower volume in week one, and you slowly accumulate more volume as the weeks go on. And by the end of it, you should be at your highest intensity and highest amount of volume, to the point where one more week would just tip you into a massive spiral. So then we would deload, and then we would kind of repeat the process. And what I've ultimately found is and this is just in my opinion, but mechanical tension is the thing that what grows muscle. And certainly in the industry today, there's still a lot of debate around, well, it's not just mechanical tension, there's also mechanical stress and to a point, muscle damage. And you want to be incorporating all three of those in order to get the most amount of muscle growth. So generally, when you start talking about metabolic stress and mechanical tension, you have to add more volume and potentially add in some intensifier techniques and be doing this over time to kind of be ticking all the boxes for muscle growth. But what I found is that a lot of times people would do more, they would be more sore, their fatigue levels would be exponentially higher, and their actual performance increases would tend to drop off. And at a basic fundamental level, and this is something that Kitty gets asked quite a bit, she puts up a video of her, she put up a video of her the other day doing hack squats with like 3 plates aside, so like 120 kilos. And, people are like, they'll ask her all the questions around what's her training split, how many sets she does, how many days a week she trains and whatever. But nobody actually looks at the fact that, well, she's got 120 kilos on this hack squat and she's doing it for 7 or 8 reps. And it's just like, if you want your legs and your lower body to look much more muscular, the only thing that you need to be focused on is going from where you are now up to where something like that is. So in the case of, maybe a new client comes in, they can only do a 1 10-kilo plate on the hack squat or 2 10-kilo plates aside, or 20 kilos. And, their depth mightn't be on point, so the actual skill in how they're executing the movement, so that takes a little bit of time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the amount of sets, the amount of days, the actual training split you do is all mostly irrelevant. It's like, at the end of the day, we know that if you could take your hack squat from 20 kilos up to 120 kilos, you have to be massively stronger, so therefore have more muscle.
Yeah.
So when we understand that mechanical tension is the only thing that actually builds muscle, then metabolic stress and muscle damage from doing all excessive amounts of volume doesn't actually do much of fucking anything other than make you sore and more fatigued and require you to take deloads because you've trained to a point where your body's no longer recovering. So if we then just kind of go, okay, well, let's do it the other way, and this is something that I kind of come to my own realization personally, and then also would see it with clients, is here's an example. So we would do a training block. You might have been here when we're doing this. Accumulation over 4 weeks, whatever. We deload, we do another 4 weeks deload, do another 4 weeks deload, and then we would sort of maybe change the whole structure of the program. And after like 2 of those cycles through, people like feeling a bit low. I'm like, so I implemented a resensitizer program where it was basically like, it's the same program, but I only want you to do 2 sets, and you're going to be doing half the amount of exercises and half the amount of sets. And we're just going to do this for 4 weeks just to give you an extended period of time of just feeling better. And I explained it in that way and whatever. And people are like, oh, I'll just give it a try and sort of feel it. I'm like, the goal is just to maintain and just, feel what it. And by the end of that, everyone was hitting PBs. All of their performances were massively up. And I was like, this is really interesting. It's not just one person, it's every fucking person. This is crazy. So what's the difference here? Well, the difference is they were going into each session recovered.
Yeah.
So if you're going into each session recovered, you can then, because we also know motor unit recruitment is inhibited by central nervous system fatigue. Okay, so central nervous system, your central command, so your brain, if there is fatigue there, it can't fire as many motor units to recruit. So therefore, your ability to accumulate more reps and push harder as a result of that accumulation is not going to be there just because you're in a fatigue state. So it's like, why don't we look at it from the point of, if we know that we're going to add all of this weight is ultimately what's going to see the muscle increase, let's just focus on going into the gym when we're fully recovered, go as hard as we can, record the extra weight and extra reps we've got, and don't go back and train again until we're fully recovered. Now, from an individual perspective, right, and we can talk about Anna, for example, another amazing client of ours who was, working, side by side with you at the time.
Yep. Anna's amazing.
Anna's got an amazing work capacity.
I don't know how she does it. We talk about it all the time.
I know she does triple the volume that you do,
She's a
but
machine when it
she
comes to that.
recovers.
Yes.
Now, she would be a bit of an outlier because the other thing, it's like, people are like, oh, you're doing more volume, so she mustn't be pushing each set as hard as possible. I'm like, no, she trains
No,
every
she
set
trains
to the
hard.
house. Do you know what I mean? And I watch her, and she trains at like 3:30 a.m. in the morning. Like she's just
Yep.
built a bit different. And it's just like, well, ultimately, if you did that, you would shit the bed, and if
I
she did,
can't. We
yeah,
know I
you
can't
just
do.
can't.
I did higher volume before, and when I came into training with you, my volume came right back, and the muscle I built in a 12-month build period compared to the previous 3 years
Mm,
is huge. Is
yeah,
huge, and the only change we've made, because I've always trained hard.
yeah,
The only change that was made was that volume and those rep ranges.
yes,
What the
yes,
6 to 15 rep range is what we're working in.
yeah,
I'll be honest, I think we did the first half was a combination of 6 to 8, and the other set was a 10 to 15, whatever it
yep,
was.
yep.
I think the
Back off.
second half of the build we actually moved to just 2 sets of 6 to 8 reps, and I
Mm,
feel good every time I go back. Like my love for training has just, I didn't think it could get any better, but it did. I feel good
mm,
walking out.
mm.
I don't feel like I'm totally wiped and can't go for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I look at Anna and I'm tired just thinking about what she's doing.
I know. I used to watch her training videos, and she'd send me, and I'm just like, oh man, like how like it's just incredible.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like she's still doing the mechanical tension part that's growing the muscle. She's still doing the
Yeah.
progressive overload every
She
week.
does it hard.
But
Mm.
she can just handle a little bit more and recover from that. So therefore, it makes sense for her to do that. If we tried to get you to do that, and after 2 weeks you're like, I need a deload because I'm tired and whatever, and my actual training numbers are going backwards. Well, we've got all the objective data and subjective data there to say that it's not working. So again, it's that what works for me may not work for you. What works for some may not work for others. There's an individual approach for each and every person.
And tracking
And
that data, so
yeah,
you've got that with, whether it's you're tracking it yourself or you're tracking it with a client or whatever that, you coach, make sure you're getting someone that's tracking that data and
yeah,
actually looking at it and doing something with it, because it
yeah.
tells such a big story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the answer to the question, like, and often like people are like, oh, could I add a few more sets of this, or could I add this exercise in? I'm like, yeah, well, let's add it in and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, well, let's just test and measure. If you can do it and you can recover from it and continue to make progress, great, we can do it. But if you do it and then after 2 weeks you're sore and tired, and it's affecting your subsequent training sessions, and your sleep's being affected, and all these other things are starting to pop up, it's just like, well, what's the variable that we changed? Well, we added in this extra work.
Mm.
Okay, that extra work has taken you out of that maximal effective volume or maximal adaptive volume into the maximal recoverable volume, where it's like it's too much for you to recover from week to week. All right, so let's just go back to what we were doing, continue to see the numbers go up progressively overload. I'm like, well, there's the answer to the question. We
Mm.
put it in, it didn't work. Cool. We took it out. Now you continue to make progress. Answer to the question. Enough said, we don't need to think anymore on it. And I
Yep.
think having that objective view and having that power of understanding that data gives you so much perspective and
Yep.
removes the emotional attachment, and certainly in this, from a training perspective, so many people are doing so much junk volume. They're just doing, it's like, you know, a lot of fitness influencers, they'll do this, they'll do their leg session. They're like, okay, we're going to do this finisher, this burnout finisher, where we're going to do 20 bodyweight squats with our heels elevated, and then we're going to go into some walking lunges. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, because it burns and it creates that muscle damage. And I'm like, all it's doing is making you sore for no outcome. It's like it's 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 like working harder and not getting paid for it. Like, it's in any other situation that would be a really dumb way to try and make improvements. But people do that because they believe that the sensation that they're getting from the particular workout is the thing that's going to be the difference maker and they're making progress. I'm like, it's fucking not. It's the thing that's actually pushing you backwards. I'm like, get rid of the shit that doesn't make sense, is not actually making any significant progress for you moving forward. Like, actually measurable progressive overload, creating mechanical tension with the appropriate amount of rate and the appropriate amount of rep ranges. You just do that and then you go home.
Yep.
And you eat and you sleep and you recover and you come back and you do it for the other body parts on the other day. and that's it. It's just like
I
you
reckon I
don't
can
need to
tell.
do anything.
I reckon I can tell after some sets whether it's going to be, is that right for me or not. I can feel absolutely wiped the minute you put the weights down because you've just finished. But if I'm not ready to go into my next exercise, I go, yeah, there's something going on here, because
Yeah,
there's not even in that recovery. You're slowly going down and down and down
yeah,
as your session goes on until you walk out the door going, oh my God, I've got to go home and sleep. Like
I'm knackered.
it's,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yep.
From your perspective, why do you think I've had so much success in this last 2 years to get to where I am now?
I think you've just been so diligent in following the plan that we laid out. I mean, it's not complicated. I mean, we had the back and forths, and we
Mm,
had good discussions around what it is that you wanted to achieve, and obviously accumulating that data around what foods work best for you and how you're going to implement what training and the training volume and the exercise selections and your
yeah,
execution the day. Like, we had quite a bit of that data built up, so it was just a case of refining that over time and making the adjustments to continue to progress. But I mean, you can write the greatest training program or the best nutrition structure, whatever, but if the adherence is poor, I mean, it won't be worth a pinch of shit. And I think once you bought into this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it, you held a really high standard for yourself. You're like, okay, I committed to this. This is the thing that I want. This is what I have to do, so I'm going to do it. And it's and you weren't perfect along the way. You had times where you fell off, or you had life events come up that kind of threw
yeah.
you out. But it just that
They're
happens to
moments in
everyone.
time. They're not a continuation.
Exactly. And I
Yeah,
think that's why having that communication, that culture, like, it just allows
yeah.
you to. It's like, I don't expect you to be a robot. Like, nobody's a robot. We're all human beings. We're all emotional creatures. We're all going to have times where things are just harder than they probably should be, and then we're going to have times where we're going to make great progress. But ultimately, the plan that we laid out was specific to what it is that you wanted,
Yeah.
and you just executed. So if nothing else, your ability to just get your head down and fucking get on with it is awesome. And I mean, that's why you're having such great success now in your own coaching business, because like, well, this is what I want. This is the outcome that I want. So what do I need to do to get there? Who do I need to hire? Who do I need to get mentored off? What are the things I need to do that's going to get me to that result? And
Oh,
you
my
just do it.
business coach is going to love you. She's the
Yeah.
same. Head down, bum
Yeah.
up, just get the work done.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no magic pill in anything in life, as we know. It's just like, you know, you have to be prepared to eat. Actually, there was a funny reel that I saw from Alex Hormozy the other day, and he was talking about the entrepreneur life. And he was just like, um, being an entrepreneur is like getting kicked in the nuts. And then you have some days where the pain sort of dissipates a bit until you get kicked in the nuts again. And it just on and on and on. But over time, you become a lot more resilient at taking those shots. And at that point is when you're actually starting to make some really good progress. And it's just the same. There's plenty of times where I don't want to go to the gym, right? There's sometimes I don't wake up like I did yesterday and go, oh man, calf raise, leg curls, hack squats, leg extensions. Fuck yeah, I'm pumped to do this. I'm like, I don't have those types of feelings. I never have those types of feelings. And sometimes I'm just like, oh man, this is just going to be hard today. But it's a standard. It's
It's a
just like,
standard, and
I
it's
just
that
go and get it
habit
done.
that you create, that those habits.
Yep.
I know those habits make me feel good. So even if I'm
Yep.
not excited going, I mean, I do love training,
Yeah.
but
I
even
love
if I'm
hitting the
not
PB.
excited going into the gym,
Yeah.
I know it's those habits. And like I said before, if there's times where, like over Christmas, I probably didn't train as much, all the rest of it, but I
Yeah.
crave going back to it, even though I'm not like, hell yeah, this is a party, I'm going to train. I still crave to go back to it because I know I
Yes.
feel good. I know I
Yep.
feel better,
Yep.
and I'm
Yep.
committed to feeling better. I don't ever
Yeah.
want to go back to feeling the way I felt.
No, and I think that was a big driver for you, like, because you come from a place that was, pretty rough, and
Yeah.
you now understand what it actually is to feel awesome and to make progress and to see these changes in different areas of your life, and I think
I
that's a really
sometimes wonder
powerful
if
driver.
don't actually realize what it feels like to feel good. Like I
No.
thought I felt okay. I thought I was pretty healthy. Just had a few issues going on that, hey, that's life. And
Yes.
then when you get to the other side and you realize, you just don't realize how good you can feel. And I think if people gave it that opportunity,
Yep.
they won't go back. And sometimes it takes, that coming off once or, a few times to go back and go, oh, fuck, I feel like shit again. Oh, back on the wagon. Yep, feel great again. I did that in early
Agreed.
stages, on off a little
Yeah.
bit. It wasn't a huge habit of mine because I'm a creature of habit. I do like to have that structure. So it helped me. But I think if people just gave themselves that opportunity to understand how good it feels, I just feel too good and I don't want to go back there.
Yep. No,
It's
yeah,
not worth it.
absolutely right. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
All
It's like
right.
putting your hand on a
Rapid.
frying pan. You're like,
Yes.
oh, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
Get back on it. Yeah.
A couple of rapid fire questions to wrap this up.
Mm-hmm.
What's my biggest strength?
Effort.
What's my weakness I need to work on? In any perspective.
I would say it's like one thing, but I would say just continue to believe in yourself. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yeah.
See your point. Point taken. God. How would you describe my training style?
I would describe it as it's very much based on an accumulation of a lot of data and a lot of trial and error to get it to the point where the volume, the exercise selection, the amount of days, the intensity level, the execution of those particular exercises to that point. So it's just like your training style is your unique Blue Driver's training style. It's based around like a full body type sort of structure. Sort of, I think, or I don't know if you've changed that now or if you're kind of doing
No, I'm still doing what you gave me just to get through to the end. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. But I think we were doing the full body for quite a while, and you made really good progress. And then I think during the deficit, what did we change? It was a little bit more of an upper
It was
lower
a
split.
deficit. We changed it. Yeah.
Yeah, just because the full body's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more taxing when you're eating a little bit less food. But yeah, I mean, it's your trading style is Blue Driver's trading style.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
My word of the year is finesse, and I'm finessing some stuff in my business. I'm finessing stuff in my personal life, and I have a desire to finesse my training execution of moves.
Yep.
So that's my
Yes.
next one.
Yes, very appropriate word. I agree.
Oh, actually, that is the next question anyway. One thing I need to work on in my training technique.
Just probably staying composed in some of those bigger movements when shit gets hard. I think,
Training
like
anxiety has been big of late.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think you can't, when you're trying to make the progress that you're trying to make, training anxiety is just part of it. I mean, there's plenty of times where I go in, I'm like, fuck, how am I going to try and deadlift today? Or how much is on the hack squat? Like those big movements where you just like, you unrack it. You're like, oh my God, this feels really, really heavy, and your ability to not allow that voice in your head to kind of overcome that. And it's just like, well, remember, I'm not just putting this weight on that I've never done before. I've progressively overloaded appropriately over an extended period of time to get to the point where I'm now capable of doing this, and then it's just about backing yourself, and it's like I stay composed, I breathe, I maintain my tempo. So as you said, that finesse of execution is so important to being able to do that. So stay composed. Yeah.
Critique my overall physique. What should I focus on in my next moving forward? If you were still going to be my coach, even though you left me high and dry, thanks for that, love. What would you work on in my physique?
What do you think?
No, this is questions for you. Okay.
Yeah,
I
no,
have
no.
uneven lats and it's driving me nuts. So I'd like to even out my lats. But I think I'm really happy with how my hamstrings grew, but I think my glutes and quads and shoulders are the three things I would probably, if I were to pick as my weakness, that I would like to see more of.
Yeah, I think for you, looking at that picture you sent me the other day, I think shoulders would be the
Yeah.
big one. You'll probably find that'll even out your lats. I mean, bigger shoulders creates more of a V taper and kind of brings things
Mhm.
into proportion. So I'd probably go shoulders and glutes. I think for you,
Yeah.
that'd be if you were going to run a specialization, I'd probably do a specialization of shoulders first, and then after that, specialization of glutes.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time today. It's always lovely chatting with you. I love
You're
hearing
very
you
welcome.
get passionate and talk about the training. You're always awesome to listen to.
It's great to chat. It's awesome to see you and what you're doing now with your own coaching success. I mean, it's such a
Thank
I'll,
you.
I'll say this: it's such a wonderful compliment to myself and the fucking awesome job that I've done coaching, because you're
It
now just
certainly is.
doing exactly what I.
Because everything we've just heard you say is everything that's worked for me, and I am passing on, the pro-metabolic, the health, getting
Yeah.
the foundations right, looking at the mechanical tension instead of flogging yourself. Just, there's so many things in there. And
Yes.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. You and Kitty are amazing, amazing human beings, and I wouldn't be where I am today. There's been some key people that got me to where I am. 3, you and Kitty
Mm.
are one lot that
Mm.
that put me on this, not that you put me on this pathway, but things you have said and done and what I've witnessed you do. And I've gone, yep, this is the pathway for me. And I have to say,
Mm.
moving into coaching and being able to touch people in this way has been the most satisfying thing I've ever done in a career, ever.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, and I completely agree. It's so rewarding, and I think if you were to go and start coaching people with a completely different approach, I'd sort of be like, oh, gee, what the fuck happened there? Did I not rub off on that? So it's so awesome to see you are doing it and you're living it, and you're so passionate and you've got a fantastic way with people. So it's no surprise that you're having the success that you are. So it's great to see. Good on you.
Thank you. Well, everyone, once again, if you've got some great takeaways from this show today, feel free to screenshot it, share it on Instagram, and tag me at strengthtraining.nutritionist. And we will see you in the next episode.